Hello, Chris Maxwell here, and I'm going to do a reading for you from the book Embracing Now, Pain, Joy, Healing, Living, and the poem Slowly, Surely. After I do the reading, we will let Chris Pipkin take some time to reflect and to walk us through the process of what is kind of happening in the literature perspective, the meaning of the poem. But let me do I'll try to do a quick reading, Slowly, Surely. Slowly but surely, the statement says, as I'm slowly but not so surely sure of where this thinking goes. We often rush unnecessarily. Forced hurry from human denial and determination deletes a peaceful process of long walk, of the deep conversation, of the healing while waiting, of the possibility of becoming more sure in the slow pace. Square one, last straw, more cliches with expected meaning can actually contain other meanings if heard, read, viewed differently. The same for slowly but surely, that overused phrase stated habitually, automatically, and often unnecessarily. But the slowly and the surely, can keep a deep declaration over time. Assurance might come. In no hurry, a will, a way, a cliche, but much more, living with confidence in the long walk of everything. Again, that's a reading from the poem Slowly, Surely. And now let's take time and let Chris Pipkin walk us through it from a very different perspective as he gives his thoughts on the meaning of this poem.
Hi, I'm Chris Pipkin, Assistant Professor of English at Emmanuel College. Chris Maxwell has asked me to analyze one of his poems, Slowly, Surely, today. And so that's what we're going to be doing. I said in an earlier video that the purpose of analyzing poetry is to get beyond just kind of literally what it's saying, and to really kind of digest and understand how it is not only what it means on the surface, but how it's doing what it's saying. In other words, how does the form of the poem draw attention to itself and kind of complement or contradict what it seems to be literally saying. So we're going to do that with Slowly but Surely, and what I want you to notice in this poem is about slowing down and taking time, right? And not allowing cliches to rob us of leading an examined life. And what I want to look at in this poem specifically is the ways that it forces us as the reader to slow down. So we've all heard the cliche, slowly but surely, right? People say this all the time without giving it a lot of thought. And part of what Chris Maxwell is doing here is sort of critiquing that tendency, but also showing how the cliche, slowly but surely, has a lot of truth to it, that things that we can be sure of often come slowly. And he starts doing that with the title. The title, rather than being Slowly but Surely, is Slowly, period, Surely, period. Right up here. And what that's forcing us to do through the use of punctuation is to slow down. We see that period, we stop, we see the next word in the period, and we stop. Slowly, surely. He's also taken the contrastive but, right, out of this title. Implying basically, and this is what he says later on in the poem, that there isn't really a contrast here, that things that come slowly do come surely, or things that we can be sure of are things that come slowly. So looking at the poem itself, notice that unlike Letter to the Rain, we have a lot of line breaks here. And what these line breaks are doing is causing us to read and digest things slowly. Our eyes can only take in so much at a time because of the form of this poem, which forces us to kind of slow down and digest it. Slowly but surely, the statement says, as I'm slowly but not so surely sure of where this thinking goes, right? So it's phrase by phrase. We're kind of digesting and having to reflect as our lines skip down to the next part, what this says, which is kind of the opposite of what cliches do. And he's critiquing, again, the cliche slowly but surely, and saying, I'm slowly but not so surely sure of where this thinking goes. The thing about cliches is that we can predict, when someone says the beginning of a cliche, we can usually predict the end, right? And he's talking about how they kind of can be a cheap way of thinking and of talking. And he goes on to develop this. We often notice again the punctuation, lots and lots of punctuation in this piece. Again, forcing us to slow down as we digest it. We often rush unnecessarily, forced hurry from human denial and determination deletes a peaceful process of the long walk, comma, of the deep conversation, comma, of the healing while waiting, comma, of the possibility of becoming more sure in the slow pace, right? So again, this is an explanation of why cliches cheapen the way that we think and the way that we experience life. Broken up, phrase by phrase, forced hurry, from human, denial and determination, deletes the peaceful process of the long walk of the deep conversation. You have the first mention of this concept of the long walk here, that there's a value, right, in waiting, because waiting allows us to heal. If all our life is in prose and in cliches, and we're always trying to get to the next thing, and we're not patient, we're robbed of this kind of healing while waiting. We're robbed also of the possibility of becoming more sure in the slow pace. And then he lists off a few more cliches. Square one, period. Last straw, period. More cliches with expected meaning can actually contain other meanings if heard, comma, read, comma, viewed differently. So again, the interesting thing about cliches is even though they can tend to keep us from thinking deeply about things, if we really focus on the cliches themselves, we can find other ways to think about them. And that's what he's doing with slowly but surely here, right? The same for slowly but surely, that overused phrase, stated habitually, automatically, and often unnecessary. But the slowly and the surely, and this is where, as far as I'm concerned, it becomes more difficult to understand the poem. And that's not a critique of the poem, because poems ought to be difficult to understand sometimes. Sometimes poems simply are, and you have to kind of wrestle with them as they are in their opaqueness before they become kind of an icon, right? And before they bring an epiphany to you, right? Which is kind of what he's talking about here, right? The slowly and the surely can keep a deep declaration. And that's a phrase that you probably want to think about, right? And go back to and return to again and again, because the slower you are trying to understand it and think over it and meditate on it, the more sure you're going to be of the truth that you find in it, right? That's the really neat thing about poetry, that it rewards repeated readings and kind of coming back from new angles all the time. Over time, assurance might come. In no hurry, period. A will, period. A way, period. A cliche, but much more. Living with confidence in the long walk of everything. So he himself in this poem is revisiting the phrase that he mentioned earlier in the poem, the long walk, but adding on of everything, right? that this is all of life is a process, waiting and thinking and studying, and thinking again and looking again. This is a way to walk with everything, and not simply exploit everything in order to get where you want to go as fast as you can, right? And this is the way that life happens. This is the way that healing happens. Keep a deep declaration is worth revisiting. That there's something deep down within words, right? Within the things that those words signify, that can declare itself, right? Provided that you approach it slowly. This also allows you to find some sort of sureness in what you think about it. That's my view of this poem. You might have another one. Feel free to weigh in on the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Bye.